All right, everyone, get ready for another deep dive. Today, we are going to tackle the world's major religions.
Yeah, sounds good. We've got these two YouTube videos
Right.
with auto-generated transcripts, so you know how those are. We might run into a few hiccups with the text, but we'll make sure we focus on the big picture.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like we're on a quest, right,
Mhm.
to find like the greatest spiritual hits, from around the globe.
Exactly. And we are going to try to find the common threads that connect all these faiths together and also point out what makes each one unique.
I think a lot of people out there, they think they already have a pretty good understanding of like the basics of the big religions. But I bet we're going to uncover some pretty surprising things along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Even folks who think they know like one specific religion really well, they might be surprised to discover some new layers of meaning or maybe some new complexities, you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so before we get into all the details, I think it's good to take a step back. Like, why do religions even exist? What need are they trying to fill?
Well, a lot of times religions pop up because people are trying to answer some of life's really big questions, like, is there a God? What happens to us after we die? What's the point of it all? You know, all that existential stuff.
Yeah, those are some heavy questions. No wonder religions have, captured people's imagination for such a long time.
And it's really cool to see how different religions come up with such different answers. And you know, a lot of that has to do with like when and where these religions came from.
Okay, so let's jump in. Let's start with a religion that a lot of our listeners might think they already know, Christianity.
But here's the thing, even though it's so well known, Christianity actually has a pretty humble origin story.
Humble. For a religion with like, what, almost 2 billion followers? What do you mean?
It all started with Jesus, a carpenter
Hmm.
from this little town in the Roman Empire, and he started preaching, talking about love and forgiveness and about the coming of God's kingdom.
Hold on. The founder of like one of the world's biggest religions was a carpenter. Now, that's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, it's a detail that a lot of people don't know, and it's super important because Christians believe that Jesus was like fully divine and fully human at the same time.
So he was like a bridge between humanity and God.
Exactly. And that bridge, you cross it through
Mhm.
faith. Christians believe that if you have faith in Jesus, you can receive salvation and eternal life.
And the Bible's like their guidebook, right?
Absolutely. It's like the main text for Christians. It has stories, teachings, prophecies. It shapes their beliefs and their practices.
Okay, but there are a lot of different types of Christianity, right? Like different denominations.
Right, that's an important point. Over time, Christianity has split into different groups. Like you've got Catholicism, Protestantism, Orthodoxy.
So it's kind of like a tree, right? Deep roots, but a lot of branches going in different directions.
Perfect analogy. Now let's switch gears. Let's talk about a religion that's known for being super diverse. Hinduism.
Yeah, Hinduism has always been a bit of a mystery to me. Where do we even begin with that one?
Okay, picture this. Hinduism is like a buffet, a spiritual buffet. You've got something for everyone. Monotheism, polytheism, even atheism.
Wait, atheism in Hinduism.
That's the cool thing about it. It's flexible. It embraces a ton of different beliefs and practices.
But then what connects it all? Like, what's the common thread?
At the heart of it, Hinduism is all about escaping what they call samsara, which is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The goal is to achieve moksha, which means liberation from this cycle.
Okay. Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, what does liberation actually mean in this context?
It means going beyond the limits of, our earthly existence and merging with the ultimate reality, which Hindus call Brahman.
So basically, it's about reaching a state of like spiritual enlightenment, becoming one with the divine source.
You got it. And you get there through good karma.
Ah, karma. Everyone's always talking about karma. But what does it actually mean in Hinduism?
It's cause and effect. Your actions, good or bad, shape your destiny, not just in this life, but in future lives, too.
So if you're righteous, you get good karma. And that means a better rebirth.
Right. And Hindus believe that by doing things that are in line with dharma, their moral duty,
Right.
they can purify their karma and get closer to moksha.
Dharma. That sounds pretty complicated. It's like a set of rules or something?
It's more like a guiding principle. It includes righteous conduct, ethical behavior, and fulfilling your obligations in society.
So basically, Dharma is about living a life that's like in tune with the cosmic order.
You could put it that way.
Mm.
Now let's check out a religion that has a unique take on suffering. Buddhism.
Suffering. That doesn't sound like the most fun topic.
I get it, but stick with me here. Buddhism isn't about, like, dwelling on suffering. It's about understanding where it comes from and figuring out how to break free from it.
So it's more about facing it head on instead of trying to avoid it.
Right. And it all started with Siddhartha Gautama, a prince who gave up everything to seek enlightenment.
A prince. Now that's a plot twist. What made him make such a big change?
Well, he got disillusioned with all the suffering he saw, and he really wanted to find a way out of it. After, like, years of meditation, he achieved enlightenment and became known as the Buddha.
And what did the Buddha discover?
He realized that suffering is just a part of life, but it's not permanent. It comes from our attachments, our cravings, and the way to get free is to overcome those.
So it's all about detaching yourself from things that cause pain, finding inner peace.
Exactly, and he laid out a path for how to achieve that, the Eightfold Path.
Okay, what's that all about? Is it like a set of rules to follow?
It's more like guidelines for developing wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline.
So it's a holistic approach to, like, escaping suffering.
You could say that. The ultimate goal for Buddhists is nirvana. It's a state of perfect peace and freedom from the cycle of birth and death.
Nirvana. That sounds amazing. Is it like heaven?
It's not a place. It's a state of being. It's when all suffering ends and you realize the ultimate truth.
So it's about going beyond the limits of our ego,
Yeah.
merging with, like, a higher consciousness.
You got it. Now, let's shift gears to a religion that emphasizes submission to God's will, Islam.
Islam is, it's often in the news,
Mhm.
but I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about it. What are some of the key beliefs that define Islam?
At its core, it's about surrendering to the will of Allah, which is the Arabic word for God.
Surrender. That sounds intense. What does that look like in everyday life?
It means recognizing that Allah is the one true God and following his guidance, which is revealed in the Quran, their holy book.
So the Quran is like the roadmap for living a good life.
Yeah, you could say that. It contains the revelations that the Prophet Muhammad received, and Muslims believe he was the last messenger of God.
So Muhammad is like the link between Allah and humanity.
Exactly. And Muslims believe that by following the Quran and Muhammad's example, they can reach salvation and enter paradise.
Okay, and there are certain practices that are, like, super important in Islam, right? Like the 5 pillars.
You got it. They're the foundation of Islamic practice.
Oh, they all about.
They're the core duties of every Muslim. First, you have the declaration of faith, believing that there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet.
Okay, so that's like the starting point. What's next?
Prayer. Muslims pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, which is their holiest city.
Wow, 5 times a day. That's serious commitment. What's the third pillar?
Zakat. It's giving alms,
Yeah,
sharing your wealth with people who need it.
it's like a built-in system for social justice.
Exactly. Then you have fasting during Ramadan. Muslims don't eat or drink from dawn till dusk.
Wow, that sounds challenging. What's the point of that?
It's a time for, like, spiritual reflection, self-discipline, and empathy for people who are struggling.
Yeah, I can see how that would make you more humble and grateful.
Absolutely. And the 5th pillar is the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Every Muslim is supposed to do that at least once, right? If they're able to.
That's right. It's a super meaningful experience. It brings together Muslims from all around the world.
Sounds like a powerful symbol of unity.
It is. All right, let's travel back in time now to 15th century Punjab, India. That's where Sikhism started.
Sikhism. Okay. I'll admit, I don't know much about that one. What makes it unique?
I'd say Sikhism is all about radical equality.
Radical equality. How so?
Well, the founder, Guru Nanak, he challenged the caste system. He said all humans are equal in God's eyes.
Wow, that was revolutionary back then. So how did his teachings turn into a whole religion?
After Guru Nanak, there were 9 other gurus, each one adding to his teachings. The 10th guru, Guru Gobind Singh, he started the Khalsa. It's a community of Sikhs who are dedicated to defending their faith and fighting for justice.
So the Khalsa are like the warriors of Sikhism.
You could say that. They're known for being brave, for fighting for social justice, and they have a very distinctive appearance. They wear the 5Ks.
5Ks, what are those?
They're 5 physical symbols. They show Sikh identity and values: quiche, uncut hair, conga, a comb, kara, a steel bracelet, kachera, undergarments, and kirpan, a ceremonial dagger.
Those are powerful symbols. What do they all mean?
They represent spiritual discipline, cleanliness, strength, commitment, and defending the weak.
So Sikhism isn't just about personal spirituality. It's about being active in the world and fighting for what's right.
Absolutely. And they express that through seva, which means selfless service.
Siva. That sounds a lot like zakat in Islam.
You're right. Both religions really emphasize sharing what you have and helping others.
It's interesting how these different religions, even though they started in different places, often have similar values.
Yeah, it shows that humans all over the world, we share a lot of the same desires for meaning, for purpose, for connection.
Now, let's head over to Japan. Let's explore Shinto, which is all about nature.
Imagine this. You're walking through a peaceful forest, you come across this bright red torii gate, and you just feel this sense of awe. That's Shinto.
Sounds incredibly peaceful. So what do Shinto followers believe?
Shinto is about honoring the kami, which are spirits or deities that live in nature.
So it's a religion that sees nature as sacred.
Exactly. Mountains, rivers, trees, rocks, everything. Shinto sees the divine in everything.
So is it like pantheism?
You could say that. It's the belief that the divine is present in all of creation.
And what about shrines? What role do those play in Shinto?
Shrines are like the homes of the kami, places where people can go to connect with them and pray.
And since kami are everywhere in nature, I guess that means there are a lot of shrines in Japan.
You got it. There are thousands of Shinto shrines all over Japan.
What kinds of things do people do at Shinto shrines? Are there any special rituals?
Purity is a huge concept in Shinto. Before you enter a shrine, you have to do a ritual cleansing with water.
It's like washing away the impurities of the outside world, right,
Yeah.
before entering this sacred space.
Exactly. And they offer prayers, they make offerings, they participate in festivals that celebrate the kami and the seasons.
Sounds like a religion that's really in tune with the rhythms of nature.
You could say that. All right, now let's get into some lesser known but equally fascinating religions, starting with Rastafarianism.
Rastafarianism. I'm thinking dreadlocks, reggae music.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in those stereotypes, but Rastafarianism is so much more than that. It's a vibrant spiritual movement with a really rich history and a powerful message.
So what's the story behind Rastafarianism? Where did it come from?
It started in the 1930s in Jamaica, a time of a lot of social and political unrest. The Rastafari movement got a lot of its inspiration from the teachings of Marcus Garvey. He was a Jamaican activist who was all about Black empowerment and returning to Africa.
So it's a religion that comes from a struggle for liberation.
Exactly. Rastafarians believe that Haile Selassie I, the former emperor of Ethiopia, was the living embodiment of God, who they call Yah.
Hold on, they saw a real-life political leader as divine.
Yeah. They believed his coronation in 1930 fulfilled a prophecy in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, about a black king who would rise up and liberate his people.
Wow, that's a powerful connection to biblical prophecy. What else do Rastafarians believe?
They really emphasize living naturally, respecting the earth, and connecting with the divine. They do that through meditation, chanting, and the use of cannabis, which they call ganja.
Wait, so using cannabis is a spiritual practice for them?
Yeah, they believe that ganja can help you reach a higher state of consciousness and connect with Jah more deeply.
Do they have anything in their scriptures that supports that practice?
They often talk about a passage in the Bible. In Revelation 22.2, it talks about the tree of life and how its leaves are for the healing of the nations.
Interesting. So it's not just recreational for them. It's about deepening their spiritual connection.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to another religion that people often get wrong. Voodoo.
Voodoo. Yeah, I'm ready to go beyond the Hollywood stereotypes and learn what it's really all about.
Me too. Voodoo is a religion that comes from West African traditions. It was brought to the Americas during the slave trade.
So it's a religion that was shaped by the experience of being forced from their homeland and by different cultures mixing together.
Exactly. In places like Haiti, Louisiana, and Brazil, voodoo mixed with indigenous beliefs and also Catholicism, it created a unique spiritual blend.
Okay, so what are the main beliefs in voodoo?
Voodoo practitioners believe in a supreme creator god, Bondi, but they also believe in a bunch of spirits called Wa. The Wa act like messengers between humans and the divine.
So it's like a spiritual hierarchy, right? Bondi at the top, and the Wa are his helpers.
Exactly. And each Wa has its own personality, its own domain, and its own preferences. And practitioners try to connect with them through rituals, offerings, and ceremonies.
What about the dolls and stuff you see in voodoo?
Those objects are often used to help people connect with the Wa, but they're not magical in themselves. It's all about the intention and the energy behind the ritual, not the objects.
So it's about using spiritual energy to make things happen, like healing, protection, guidance.
You got it. Now let's talk about a religion that takes nonviolence really seriously. Jainism.
Jainism. Okay, another one I don't know much about. What makes it different?
Jainism is all about minimizing harm to all living things, no matter how small or insignificant they seem.
So it's like taking ahimsa, that principle of nonviolence we talked about with Hinduism and Buddhism, and taking it to the next level.
Yeah, you could say that. Jains believe that every single living thing, humans, insects, even plants, has a soul, and every living thing can suffer.
Wow, that's a radical level of empathy.
Right. And it's not just about physical harm. They also want to avoid causing any kind of mental or emotional harm through their thoughts, words, and actions.
That sounds really difficult. How do they live like that in a world that doesn't always share their values?
It's not easy, but they do their best to make choices that minimize harm. A lot of Jains are vegetarian or vegan, and some even wear masks to avoid accidentally breathing in and killing small insects.
That's some serious dedication. What's the ultimate goal in Jainism? What are they trying to achieve with all this nonviolence?
Their ultimate goal is moksha, just like in Hinduism and Buddhism, liberation from that cycle of birth and death. They believe that by purifying their karma through nonviolence, they can break free from suffering and reach enlightenment.
So it's a path that takes incredible discipline.
Definitely. All right, let's talk about a religion that's all about balance and harmony. Taoism.
Taoism. Okay, I've heard of that one, but I couldn't tell you much about it. What are the key teachings?
Taoism is a Chinese philosophy and religion. It's all about living in accordance with the Tao, which means the way or the path.
So it's about figuring out how to go through life in harmony with the natural order.
Exactly. Taoists believe that the universe is governed by a constant interplay of opposites, yin and yang. And they say true harmony comes from finding balance between those forces.
What are some examples of yin and yang?
Think about light and dark, hot and cold, masculine and feminine. These are all pairs of forces that balance each other out in the universe.
I can see how that concept of balance can be applied to so many things in life.
For sure. Taoism is about embracing simplicity, being present in the moment, and developing virtues like humility, compassion, and non-attachment.
Sounds like a recipe for a peaceful and fulfilling life.
It can be.
Okay.
Oh, now let's look at a religion that's often associated with magic, Wicca.
Wicca. I thought that was a more modern thing.
It is. Wicca emerged in the mid-20th century, but it takes inspiration from ancient pagan traditions that celebrate nature and the divine feminine.
So it's kind of like a revival of pre-Christian spirituality.
Yeah, you could say that. Wiccans believe in a balance of masculine and feminine energy in the divine, often represented by a god and a goddess.
Interesting. What kind of things do they do?
Wiccans often meet up in groups called covens, and they perform rituals that celebrate the solstices and equinoxes and other important events in nature.
So they're very connected to the seasons in the natural world.
Exactly, and they believe in magic, but not like supernatural powers. To them, magic is about focusing your own energy and intention to create positive change.
So it's more about personal empowerment and growth rather than
Yeah.
trying to control external forces.
Precisely. All right, now let's explore a religion that's rooted in the traditions of the Americas, Native American spirituality.
Native American spirituality. I've always been fascinated by the culture of Native American tribes.
It's really diverse and complex. There are hundreds of different Native American tribes, and each one has its own unique traditions.
So there's no single definition of Native American spirituality.
Right. But there are some common threads that run through many Native American traditions.
Like what?
A deep reverence for nature, a belief that everything is connected, and a strong emphasis on community and tradition.
So it's a worldview that sees humans as just one part of a larger web of life.
Exactly. Native Americans often see the earth as their mother and the sky as their father, and they try to live in harmony with all of creation.
What about the afterlife? What do they believe happens after death?
Many Native American tribes believe in a spirit world that exists alongside our physical world, and they communicate with their ancestors through rituals and ceremonies.
It sounds like a spiritual tradition that's very connected to the land and the wisdom of their ancestors.
You could say that, and it's still going strong today, even after centuries of oppression and attempts to wipe out their culture.
Wow, this exploration of all these different faiths has been amazing. It's incredible how diverse and nuanced human spirituality really is.
It's like a giant tapestry with countless threads woven together. It's a beautiful and complex thing.
And even though all these religions seem so different on the surface,
Mhm.
I'm seeing some common themes popping up.
Oh yeah, what kind of themes are you seeing?
Well, a lot of them talk about connecting with something bigger than ourselves, whether it's God, nature, or the spirit world.
That's a great point. It seems like humans have this universal desire to reach beyond ourselves, to connect with something beyond our everyday experience.
Exactly. And a lot of these religions also emphasize living ethically, treating each other with compassion.
Yeah, it's like there's this shared moral compass
Yeah.
that guides us towards a more just and harmonious world, regardless of our specific beliefs.
I'm also seeing how much respect for nature comes up in a lot of these religions.
That's important. As we face more and more environmental problems, I think these spiritual traditions that focus on nature have a lot to teach us about how to live in balance with the earth.
Totally agree. This deep dive has really shown me that there are so many different paths to spiritual fulfillment.
And that wisdom can be found in the most surprising places.
Okay, so let's keep going on our journey of exploration. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll go even deeper into these fascinating belief systems, and I'm sure we'll find even more amazing insights.
Stay tuned.
We're back, ready to continue our deep dive into all these different religions.
Yeah, we've already hit on some of the big ones, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, and Shinto.
But there's a whole world of, like, lesser-known faiths out there,
Yeah.
each one with its own unique perspective on the divine.
So let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about some of these paths that might be a little less familiar.
Sounds good to me. I'm always up for expanding my horizons, spiritually speaking, of course.
Okay, first up, let's shine a light on Rastafarianism, a religion that a lot of people just think of in terms of its symbols.
Yeah, the dreadlocks, the reggae music.
It's easy to get caught up in those stereotypes. But Rastafarianism is way more than that. It's a real spiritual movement with a rich history and a powerful message.
So give us the rundown. What's the real story behind Rastafarianism? Where did it begin?
It all started back in the 1930s in Jamaica. Things were pretty rough back then, socially and politically. The Rastafari movement was inspired by a guy named Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican activist who believed in black empowerment and the idea of returning to Africa.
So it's a religion that grew out of a struggle for freedom and self-determination.
Exactly. Rastafarians believe that Haile Selassie II, the former emperor of Ethiopia, was actually God in the flesh. They call God Jah.
Wait, so they thought a real-life political leader was divine?
They did. They believed that when Selassie was crowned in 1930, it fulfilled a prophecy from the Bible, from the Book of Revelation. The prophecy was about a black king who would rise up and free his people.
Wow, that's some serious biblical stuff. So what else is central to Rastafarianism?
Rastafarians really focus on living in a natural way, respecting the earth,
Yeah.
and connecting with the divine. They do that through meditation, chanting, and using cannabis. They call it ganja.
Hold on, so using cannabis is like a spiritual practice for them.
It is. They believe ganja can help them achieve a higher level of consciousness and connect with Jah more deeply.
Is there anything in their scriptures that back that up?
They often point to a verse in the Bible, Revelation 22.2. It talks about a tree of life and its leaves being for the healing of the nations.
Interesting. So for them, it's not just recreational. It's about deepening their spiritual experience.
You got it. All right, let's move on to another religion that often gets misunderstood, voodoo.
Voodoo? Yeah. I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about that one.
It's true. Hollywood loves to show voodoo as all about curses and black magic, but the truth is much more nuanced and a lot more interesting, in my opinion.
Okay, so set the record straight.
Oh.
What do voodoo practitioners actually believe?
Voodoo is rooted in traditions from West Africa. Those traditions were brought to the Americas during the slave trade.
So it's a religion that's been influenced by a lot of different cultures blending together.
Right. In places like Haiti, Louisiana, and Brazil, voodoo traditions mixed with indigenous beliefs. And even with Catholicism, it's a real mix of influences.
So what are the main beliefs?
Voodoo practitioners believe in a supreme creator god called Bondi, but they also believe in a whole bunch of spirits called Lu. The Lu act as go-betweens between humans and the divine.
So it's like a spiritual hierarchy.
Yeah.
Bondi at the top and the Lu are kind of like his helpers.
You got it. Each Lua has a unique personality, its own area of influence, and its own preferences. And practitioners want to connect with the Lu. They do that through rituals, offerings, and ceremonies.
What about all those dolls you see associated with voodoo?
Those dolls are often used as a way to focus attention, to connect with a particular Lua. But they're not inherently magical or anything. It's the intention, the energy you put into the ritual. not the object itself.
So it's about using spiritual energy to achieve a goal, like healing or protection or guidance.
Exactly. Okay, ready for a religion that takes nonviolence super seriously? Jainism.
Jainism, I have to admit, I'm drawing a blank on that one. What's their main thing?
Jainism is all about minimizing harm to any and all living things, no matter how tiny they might seem.
So it's like taking ahimsa, that nonviolence thing we discussed with Hinduism and Buddhism, and really turning it up a notch.
You could say that. Jains believe that every living creature, from humans to insects to plants, has a soul, and all of them are capable of suffering.
Wow, that's a whole different level of empathy.
Right, and it goes beyond physical harm. They also try to avoid causing mental or emotional harm through their thoughts, their words, their actions.
Man, that's gotta be tough. How do they even do that in a world that isn't always so kind?
Yeah, it's not easy. But they try their best to make choices that minimize the harm they cause. Many Jains are vegetarian or vegan. Some even wear face masks to avoid accidentally inhaling tiny insects and killing them.
Okay, that's a whole other level of commitment. So what's the end goal in Jainism? What are they trying to achieve with all this nonviolence?
Their ultimate goal is the same as in Hinduism and Buddhism: moksha, liberation from that cycle of birth and death. They believe that if they purify their karma through nonviolence, they can break free from suffering and achieve enlightenment.
It's a path that requires a lot of discipline, self-control.
No doubt about it. Okay, let's shift gears to a religion that emphasizes balance: Taoism.
Taoism. Heard of it, but don't really know much about it. Fill me in.
Taoism is both a philosophy and a religion, from China. It's all about living in harmony with the Tao, which means the way, or the path.
So it's about figuring out how to navigate life in a way that's in tune with the natural order of things.
Precisely. Taoists believe that the universe is all about the interplay of opposites, yin and yang. And they believe that true harmony comes from finding balance between those opposing forces.
Can you give me some examples of yin and yang?
Sure, light and dark, hot and cold, masculine and feminine, all these pairs of forces that balance the universe.
I'm starting to see how that concept of balance could apply to a lot of areas of life.
It definitely can. Taoism is about simplicity, about living in the moment, and developing virtues like humility, compassion, and non-attachment.
Sounds like a good recipe for a peaceful life.
It can be. Now let's talk about a religion that's often linked to magic: Wicca.
Wicca. That's more of a modern thing, right?
You're right. Wicca as we know it today developed in the mid-20th century. But it's inspired by older traditions, pagan traditions that celebrate nature and the divine feminine.
So it's like a return to those pre-Christian spiritualities.
Yeah, you could say that. Wiccans believe in a balance of masculine and feminine energy in the divine. They often represent that with a god and a goddess.
Interesting. What are some of their practices?
Wiccans often meet in groups called covens, and they perform rituals to celebrate the solstices, the equinoxes, those key moments in the natural world.
So they're really connected to the seasons, to the cycles of nature.
Exactly. And they believe in magic, but not in the sense of supernatural powers. For them, magic is about using your own energy, your own intentions to create positive change.
It's more about empowerment and personal transformation,
Right.
not about trying to control things outside yourself.
Right on. All right, let's explore a religion that's rooted in the traditions of the Americas: Native American spirituality.
Native American spirituality. I've always found the cultures of Native American tribes to be fascinating.
It's a rich and complex area. There are hundreds of Native American tribes, and each one has its own distinct traditions.
So there's no single definition of what Native American spirituality is.
That's right. But there are some common threads that you'll find running through many of their traditions:
Like what?
a deep reverence for nature, a belief that all things are connected, and a really strong emphasis on community and tradition.
So it's a worldview that sees humans as part of a larger web of life,
Yeah,
not separate from it.
exactly. Native Americans often view the earth as their mother, the sky as their father, and they strive to live in harmony with all of creation.
What about the afterlife? What they believe happens when we die?
Many Native American tribes believe in a spirit world, and they believe it exists alongside our physical world. They often communicate with their ancestors through rituals and ceremonies.
So it's a spiritual tradition that's deeply connected to the land and to the wisdom of those who came before them.
You could say that. And it's a tradition that's still alive and well, even after centuries of oppression and attempts to destroy their culture.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening look at all these different faiths. It's amazing how diverse human spirituality really is.
It's like a giant tapestry, all these different threads woven together. It's a beautiful and complex thing.
And even though these religions seem so different at first glance, I'm seeing some patterns, some common themes running through them.
Oh, yeah. What kind of themes are you picking up on?
Well, many of them emphasize this idea of connecting with something bigger than ourselves. God, nature, the spirit world.
That's a great observation. It seems like humans all over have this desire to connect with something that transcends our everyday experience, something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And many of them also put a big emphasis on living ethically, treating other people with compassion.
Right. It's like there's a universal moral code that points us towards a more just and harmonious world, no matter what specific beliefs we hold.
I'm also noticing how much respect for nature comes up in so many of these different religions.
That's an important point, especially with all the environmental challenges we're facing these days. I think those spiritual traditions that emphasize nature have a lot to teach us about how to live in balance with the planet.
I couldn't agree more. This whole deep dive has been a great reminder that there's so many different paths to spiritual fulfillment.
And that you can find wisdom in some pretty unexpected places.
So let's keep exploring. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll go even further down the rabbit hole with these fascinating belief systems, and I bet we'll discover even more amazing insights.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. It's the final part of our deep dive into world religions. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, we've explored traditions that have been around for centuries, like Christianity and Hinduism.
And we've delved into some newer movements like Rastafarianism and Wicca. It's been a fascinating journey, exploring all these different forms of human spirituality.
It really has.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, what are some of the big takeaways for you from this whole exploration?
One thing that really strikes me is just the sheer diversity of human beliefs and practices.
It's amazing how many different ways people have found to connect with, the divine, to figure out the world, to find meaning in life.
It really is. And yet, even though there are so many differences, I'm also struck by the common themes that keep popping up.
Like what?
Well, for example, the idea of compassion. It seems to be at the heart of so many of these religions.
You're right. Whether it's Christianity's emphasis on loving your neighbor, or Buddhism's focus on cultivating loving kindness, or even Jainism's radical commitment to nonviolence. There is a definite thread of compassion running through them all.
Yeah, and it's not just compassion. We've also seen how much emphasis is placed on ethical conduct, living a righteous life.
From Islam's 5 pillars to Sikhism's concept of seva, there's a strong sense that doing the right thing is a huge part of spiritual growth and fulfillment.
Absolutely. And what about connection? That's another big one, right?
For sure. Connecting with God, with nature, with the spirit world.
Mhm.
It seems like humans everywhere have this deep longing to experience something bigger than themselves, to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah, like we're hardwired for connection
Mhm.
to the divine and to each other.
I've also noticed how important practice and ritual are in so many of these traditions.
It's an interesting point. Why do you think that is?
Well, it seems to me the rituals can be powerful. They can help you connect with the sacred. They reinforce beliefs. And they can help you develop certain qualities or virtues.
You're right. Like, think about the Muslim practice of praying 5 times a day. It's not just about saying the words, it's about creating a rhythm of connection with Allah throughout the day.
Or take Buddhist meditation. It's all about discipline, quieting the mind, cultivating mindfulness.
These rituals, even though they might look totally different from one religion to the next, they seem to play a really important role in shaping people's spiritual lives.
Another theme that's really stood out for me is the whole idea of suffering.
Ah, yes. Suffering. It's something we all experience. And it's fascinating to see how different religions have tried to understand it, to find meaning in it.
Some religions, like Christianity, see suffering as a path to redemption.
They believe it can be transformative, that it can lead to spiritual growth, and eventually to salvation.
While others, like Buddhism, focus on understanding the root causes of suffering and finding ways to ease it.
Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from our attachments, our cravings, and that if we can let go of those, we can be free from suffering.
And then there's Jainism, with its radical commitment to minimizing harm to any living being.
Jains believe that even the smallest act of violence can create negative karma and keep that cycle of suffering going.
It's amazing the different ways people think about this. this universal experience of suffering.
It really shows the depth of human thought, doesn't it? This constant search for meaning, even when we're faced with difficult things.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a real sense of awe at the vastness and the beauty of human spirituality.
Me too. It's been a rich experience.
It has. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to continue exploring all these fascinating belief systems.
That's the goal. I think the biggest thing to remember is to approach these different faiths with curiosity and respect.
Even if you don't agree with their beliefs.
Right. It's important to remember that each of these traditions represents centuries of human searching, striving, yearning for something more.
They offer valuable insights into what it means to be human and into the mysteries of life.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and be open to the beauty and wisdom that you can find in the world's religions.
Who knows, you might even discover something that speaks to your own soul, that resonates with your own spiritual journey.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into world religions. Until next time, keep searching.